celebrated its third anniversary. And immediately I saw it and said, this is kind of, it was like when I saw the web browser for the first time in '94. I just said, this is what I want to do. And that's how I felt about AI in November of 2022. And I tried to take that journey with the agency as well as my clients, and it was just too early. And by that time, I had a big infrastructure. So it's different when you're just one guy in a room when you're 26 starting something and trying to transition the agency. So that is also what I'm doing now is in my non-TAN working hours. I'm working very closely in the AI space and providing a lot of sort of general counsel to leadership teams in particular. So that's part of my story. And the reason I start out that way is that what I'm seeing right now in this space in the last 2 weeks have been absolutely breakneck in what's happening in AI. And it really comes down to one thing, and that is that Google announced its Gemini 3, and Gemini 3 is a beast of a model. And it basically, just to put it in perspective, it was Sam Altman just 2 days ago, or maybe it was even yesterday, put out a code red to all OpenAI employees, basically saying this thing is a killer and we need to focus and we need to really amp up our what we have going on. And so I bring that up because history, people oftentimes say history doesn't often repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes. And that's exactly what's happening right now in the AI space. If you go back in time 30 years ago, in 1993, 1994, Mark Andreessen, a student at University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, invents something called the web browser and launches Mosaic and sticks it on a web server, not a web server, what the hell, there was no web. Stuck it on a server, and I remember downloading it. I don't remember if it took me overnight to download it, but I downloaded it that day and started surfing the information superhighway. I mean, Al Gore was actually vice president at the time. So at any rate, you know, it was a very interesting time. And then soon thereafter, a year after, Netscape started. And Netscape became the first publicly traded company that was in the browser business. And so maybe by a show of hands of people who were around at that time, I assume that everybody used Netscape at some point in the mid-90s, right? And so what happened was it was a classic sort of early .com. It wasn't a .com necessarily. It was an early .com. It was browser. It was the first browser, really. And when I look at Netscape, I think of it as really similar to OpenAI, right? And so OpenAI started from sort of nothing. I mean, it started with funding from Elon and some other things like this, right? And they already had like a big breakup party before the whole thing even started. And it was just this dominant market share. And if you look at the market share for all the browsers, ChatGPT has just been sort of the default browser almost for the AI revolution, with others sort of like chasing after it, you know. You've got Microsoft who bought into OpenAI and now is kind of maybe licking its wounds a little bit on that investment. And then they launched Copilot, which was an absolute dud of bloatware and kind of grossness, but it was integrated, right? But people really weren't using it. And Copilot is what I loved it when I was working with Gemini on this presentation today. They called, and I think I'd seen this elsewhere, they called Copilot Clippy 2.0. So I thought that was really funny. And if people remember Clippy was part of Windows, and it was supposed to be like this AI assistant thing way before AI was anything. And it was just didn't work and nobody used it. Now, all of a sudden, we've got all of these other players. We've got Anthropic, we've got Gemini, we've got frankly, the Chinese models, the DeepSeek folks, Huawei, some of the other ones. And what's interesting about the Huawei ones, or excuse me, about the Chinese models, is the Chinese models are not friendly. They are not trying to be nice to you the way ChatGPT is like super saccharine and makes you just feel like you're going to therapy every time you're just searching for something. And the Chinese models just try and give you the answer. And so there's some really interesting things that are happening there. But really, if you look at what happened with the browser wars, is that Microsoft came along with Explorer and then all of a sudden just embedded it into the desktop, right? And so all of a sudden, everybody who had a Windows machine, which was 90% of the marketplace, all of a sudden had a browser just down in the toolbar in Windows 95 probably, or whatever it was at that time. And then all of a sudden, Netscape started having a competitor. And so you're seeing that again in this space. And so what's interesting about that is Netscape failed to exist at some point. It literally went away. It just lost all of its market share. It was the early mover. It was how people got on the internet, but it just didn't survive. And at the one case, it didn't survive because of Microsoft just putting Internet Explorer into place. And then Apple came in with Safari. And then pretty soon it's just kind of diluted, and Netscape didn't really have much to offer. And so it essentially went away. And Firefox as well came into play and all these sorts of things. So if you look at the browser wars, it's really, really similar to what we're seeing in the OpenAI, in the AI space right now. And I think the thing that's different this time around, you could also look at one other equivalent, by the way, and that's the search wars. You know, when I started Cicerone in '95, there was really only one search engine that was worth anything, and that was Yahoo. And the first things that we would do for clients after we build them their first website is get them indexed into Yahoo, which is basically a large library card catalog. It wasn't AI or anything else like that. It was literally humans trying to do a file system to try and figure out where something would go into it. By the way, Yahoo, these are things I just remember. I don't know why I remember them, but Yahoo stands for yet another hierarchical something official. Oh, I can't remember it. I'll send it in Slack to somebody else, but it actually meant something. And I thought I was going to recall it right there. At any rate, so Yahoo all of a sudden was everything. And then Google came up with Google in 1998, I think it was. And it just was way better. And it was super simple. And the Google interface, if you go to google.com right now, the only thing different from today as to what it was in 1998 is the logo's changed. Everything else is exactly the same as it was. Obviously, the technology behind it is incredible. So now we have this Gemini 3 coming out, and Gemini 3 is really a beast. And also, for AI to work, you need to have chips, you need to have learning models and LLM, and you need to have market share. And now Google is sort of like what Apple has always done, and that's be vertically integrated from top to bottom so that they own everything. Now, certainly we know that Google is buying lots of NVIDIA chips and everything else, but they've already started their own chip. AWS is launching its own chip. And so now NVIDIA people are like, well, is the NVIDIA bubble the next bubble? So I guess I just wanted to tell you that history repeats itself. And OpenAI, like nobody ever talks about Netscape ever again. Nobody ever talks about Netscape. And so it's possible that nobody ever talks about OpenAI at some point, and that Google just eats everything. And maybe something else comes along, right, out of the blue. But the idea that a startup would come out of the blue to do this, the difference between a browser and an LLM is that a browser didn't need much it doesn't take a lot of power, it just needed a computer. Whereas to build an LLM, you need full data centers and hundreds of millions of dollars in NVIDIA chips to make it happen. So you have to have deep, deep pockets to make this work. So in order to segue a little bit to what does this mean for us, and then I'll get into the actual presentation part of it, is that this is not the time to pick sides. And I talked about this a little bit when we were in Paris, and that in the sense that you cannot standardize on one model right now because you don't know who the winner is. And these models do very, very different things. The browsers were different. They all did the same thing. You put a web address in it, and then they would sort of add extensions and things like that later on. But right now, what we have basically is they're all differentiating themselves, and some do some things really, really well and don't do other things very well. And so this idea that you need to be able to shift between different models to do different tasks seems sort of redundant, but it's not redundant at all. So I'm going to share my screen. Any questions about sort of like history repeating itself? Because this is absolutely happening right now. There's no question in my mind that we're in the same sort of, whether it's a browser war or the search war, both of them happened concurrently in the late 90s. We have the exact same thing happening right now. So I wouldn't put your kids' college savings on one stock at this point, because I don't think, I mean, that's like really, really scary. And we don't know how many winners there will be. And then the other thing is, we don't know if NVIDIA is the next Cisco, right? Because what happened in the Cisco world was that everybody needed routers to make the internet scale, to be hyperscalers. We hear that word all the time now, hyperscalers, right? Well, Cisco was the shit. I mean, they were the .com. They took all the money from .com. But then all of a sudden, what happened is they overbuilt the infrastructure, and nobody needed to buy any more Cisco stuff. And so the question is, does everybody need to keep buying these NVIDIA chips, or are they going to buy billions and billions and billions of dollars of them, deploy them, and then wait for the demand of what to use? And so I'm not telling you to short NVIDIA. I'm just saying that some of these things like end up being like a rock star moment like this, but then you build out the infrastructure, and now you got to fill it in with actual revenue and customers and things that you can't build forever. So history is repeating itself. So if you want to know where the future is, look at the past. And that's where I think it's always really important for us to look at it. And so as business leaders, as agency leaders, we're tempted to say, okay, we're going to go all in on Netscape. Imagine me saying that, right? We're going to go all in on Netscape, and we're going all in on Cisco. And we're going to do that in 1996 or 1997. 2 years from now, you're out of business. You're not talking about those people anymore. So it's not time to make those decisions. All right. So before I get into the presentation side, any questions or observations or similarities that you see? Half of you weren't alive in 1995, so I get that too. Okay, everyone see that okay? By the way, I always like to disclose how these decks are getting built these days, because I like to use the tools. So for today's presentation, I worked primarily in, I had some thesis and some theories about sort of what I see happening. And I worked with Gemini 3, which has become my default right now. I toggle a little bit between, and I toggle over to ChatGPT as well, because it knows me so well, because I've used it for so long that its memory of me is so intact, which I don't like, because now I feel like that's our relationship, and I want to be a little, what do I want to say? I'm not ready to get married yet. So I was going to say something way grosser. I'm sorry. At any rate, so, I use Gemini primarily to work on the theories of what I was going on. And then at the end of that, I was able to have it write me an outline. And the outline was essentially something I could copy and paste into Gamma. And so Gamma is what you're seeing right now, which is a slide builder. And I've been using it, I don't want to say quite a bit, but more than anything else. And I'll just tell you, everybody right now, I used to spend hours and hours and hours building decks, because I got to be like kind of retentive about it. And I don't know, I would like worry about pixels and things like this. And I have to tell you, it took me probably 20 minutes to do this deck, maybe 10, 15 minutes to actually do the deck. Is it great? I don't know. I'm not trying to be great at this point. I'm trying to be efficient, so I could spend more time on thinking about things and less time on creating the deck. So anyways, that's the production of all of this was Gemini 3 and then Gamma. So that's just only a 2-step. So really what we're talking about right now is, and I wanted to give that backdrop because, again, the temptation is that we always want to like pick a standard and go with it. There's no standard right now, so you can't go with it. So if we look at what's happening right now, we've sort of like gone from this chatbot era where we were using these models for personal efficiencies, maybe in our job, like responding to emails, interpreting emails, enhanced search. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of us would just go to ChatGPT and use it like a search engine, which is essentially what it is. It's an answer machine. But at the same time, obviously, we know it's a lot more than that. And so we're sort of moving from the chatbot era, which was, yesteryear of like last year, to what does it look like to be an agentic agency. And by agentic agency, it's this idea of a synthetic workforce. I sort of hate the idea of synthetic because synthetic essentially means fake. And I don't think basing your business model on something that has an inherent meaning of fake is a really good idea. But I understand what the pundits are all saying about synthetic, meaning that it's just like the other thing, but it's an electronic version of it. But you can see how this goes. And many of us, I'm sure, have tried to make decisions about staffing and what we want to do moving forward. And, can an agent potentially do the job or take work away from people, to take the work away from people that they don't like doing, right? Or they don't do it well, or that it's not something that brings any joy to anybody. And we can essentially use this agentic workflows to move on and let people do what they're really good at and take the busy work out of it. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So already you can see the compression of time, right? So this idea that 2023 was the idea of sort of like the draft era, right? Like you use these tools to generate drafts of maybe a strategy document. You use it to synthesize your ideas maybe a bit. Even creative folks were able to use Midjourney and things like that to maybe start to think about how to mock up concepts. And maybe you could bring it to clients too. And part of it might have been show and tell. I'll just say, hey, we're leaning into these tools too. Look at this cool stuff we did in Midjourney. But everybody knew that you weren't going to use that as production, right? I think anybody in the creative space right now who's looking at Sora 2, who's looking at even Gemini and Nano Banana Pro, which is the new video production, the video engine inside Gemini. I just had dinner last night with a friend of mine who's a commercial photographer and retoucher. And thank God he's leaning in, because he's like, I can't sell what I've done for 30 years. There's just no way that I can go to that unless it's large format graphics. I mean, he's basically said, if I want to stay in business the way I am, with the way I do what I do, I'm going to have to be only in the large graphic format business, because everything else, these tools can do it, which I thought was fascinating, coming from, a 50-something-year-old commercial photographer. So we moved from 2023 to 2024, which was the idea of multimodal, which is sort of this, I would say we're still in that to a certain extent. Like Gemini's power right now is that it is multimodal, meaning that it can ingest video, text, conversations, all sorts of visuals, and it can contextualize all of that. It just is like a Hoover of multimodal content. So it's not chat text-based, obviously, anymore. You can upload all of your shit into like a Google Drive, point Gemini at it, and it knows all the stuff that's in there, no matter what format it's in. So that's sort of the multimodal standpoint of it. And now the 2025 into 2026 model is sort of this workforce era. It's agents being able to do tasks at a much more accurate and steady clip than perhaps we would be able to do as humans. And so it's kind of getting into this era of autonomy, which we've been hearing about for a long, long time, execution, but it also has reasoning built in, so it can self-correct itself a lot better than what it used to. The hallucinations are largely gone. I mean, especially even in the visual graphics side of things, you don't see six-fingered people and weird walking and things like that. I mean, that era is pretty much done. I mean, that was a year. It took 1 year. So every time it doesn't do something, it's like, just give it a second, right? And it'll catch up. So the way we look at it now is, I would say the vast majority of business users of a lot of these things, unless they have a chief AI officer or something that is mandating things, people are still operating in 2023. Most people are still using it for text. Maybe they're generating an image or two or something like that, but we are 2 generations beyond that at this point. And especially as agencies, I think that's a lot for us to be able to sort of think about. Okay, so this is a bit of an eye chart, and I apologize, but I think it's a really important, this is a really important slide to me. And by the way, also, Gemini created this slide from our chat, which I love. It wasn't a Google image search. It was based on our conversations, and I said, God, this is getting really complex. Can you at least diagram it out for me so I understand? So let me give you the gist of what we're looking at on this page. Essentially, what I talked about earlier is that this is not a time to try and figure out one platform to do all the work. There are several different platforms that we're all aware of. And this particular is showing us Gemini, ChatGPT 5, Claude 4.5. And by the way, when I am naming these versions, that's mission critical because these versions are very different from one another, right? Gemini 3 is extraordinarily different than Gemini 2. Claude 4.5 is a beast compared to its predecessor, right? And so what I want you to do is take this and realize, okay, so we now have different departments within our organization. We have strategists and sales, we have business development, we have strategists, we have client interacting people. We have artists, creatives, copywriters, and so forth. We have media and media departments. And then we have people who are doing sort of like optimization, but data work, maybe it's culture work. The issue at this point is that if we are going to ask our people to standardize on different models, it depends upon where they sit inside the agency. Because Gemini 3, for example, won't do a good job of doing agentic execution of media yet. ChatGPT 5.1 does a very good job of automating a lot of things around media, right? Claude 4.5 is largely known to be sort of the intellectual, the college professor, if you will, of the AI space. It's the space where real heavy thinking happens, and it's almost like Chaucer or Shakespeare, of the AI space. It's where writers and artists and people can gather with these tools and have relatively deep conversations with it and have deeper output much more quickly. So again, if we start at the very beginning, we have the client, we get the client brief and so forth. And as we all know, client briefs are absolutely perfect every time. Clients never miss exactly what they've hired you to do. You never have to go back and revise it. But let's just assume for a moment that is it. You have a magical client and that's what they do. You can take all of that data and now you're working with your strategists and you can ingest all of that information, right? So they might have brand standards. They might have all of their previous creative that they've ever used. They might have all the files that you've done before. They might have their audience research. They might have their competitive analysis. They might have hopefully they have their financial data that they're willing to share with you. The stuff that I'm doing non-Taan related is even before this, right? It's with the executives team so that it can flow all the way through and people are have a real good 360 understanding of the business. So the idea in this particular case is that the strategists can take all of that content and put it in one place. And in this particular place, it would be Gemini 3.0. And so your strategy team is working in that particular tool because it's the best at taking in content from across the media ecosystem. And it can synthesize that down into strategy briefs and you can have conversations with it. And I would encourage you to do that with clients, like to have conversations with AI, use voice activated AI, and do it in a meeting and ask it questions. And first of all, you're training your clients how to think differently. You're showing them new technology and the output, I guarantee you, is going to be great. And when I say great, I mean, it'll be inspiring. You'll learn things that you wouldn't have been able to learn just by doing a lot of that. And it's much more collaborative. So Gemini 3.0 would be where you would want to have that. Now, once you've got sort of the planning and strategy in place and you want to bring that into your other teams, you your teams can take all of that information, but they need to now work with something that is much more visually oriented, could be concepting, and the modes that are best for that would be things like Claude 4.5 for writing, as we just talked about before. So ingest the brief out of 3.0 and the strategy team, get that into Claude 4.5, start working with it. Your copywriters and art directors can start working with that way. And then you can also start to work with like Runway Gen 3 and Sora to start creating video concepts or image concepts, because those AIs, those LLMs are much more suited to doing that kind of work than arguably Gemini 3.0. Now, I know that somebody is saying, yeah, but have you seen Nano Banana, the new Nano Banana Pro, which I know it sounds crazy. Like it sounds like we're actually talking about real sophisticated business here when I say things like that. But that's Gemini's video generator, AI generator. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So you could probably, it's not like if you showed this slide to your video team, I'm not saying you have to use Runway 3 or Sora, right? They can use whatever they want, but there's a lot of different things that they could work with. At the same time, the media on the execution side may find that ChatGPT 5.1 is better at setting up agents, right? So to create custom agents that do things like media automation, task automation, and bid management, and a lot of different things. Like when you guys in the media business, which as you all know, that's where I sort of came from last, as having an agency. And I think what's interesting about that is that, on the media side, one of the reasons I didn't have a problem sort of shutting Cicero down when I did was that I just saw AI coming from my business, and I didn't have a way of pivoting fast enough to make it happen. I mean, that's one element. I also had a complete collapse of a few clients, but that's a different story. And so, I look at this and there's a lot more agentic work that can be done with ChatGPT 5.1 to set up agents to do tasks, to assist your media team, so that your media team isn't necessarily just doing bid management and looking at 6 screens of dashboards every day at the trade desk and at Meta and at Google AdWords, whatever. They're looking at like trends analysis, and they're having the agents develop charts to figure out audience penetration and different things. The higher level side of media, creative testing. I mean, the tether between this top and bottom between creative and media is now that you can start to get the signals that are coming out of the media that quickly can inform the creative, right? And we'll talk about that in a second, because that to me is a massive change, that you can do real-time changes, right? I mean, just take, for example, any company that is doing international marketing now, to be able to do translations into 6, 7, 8, 100, 1,000 different languages is literally a prompt. And that's crazy, right? And so the fact of the matter is that you can change out and swap in and out creative as long as you're looking at the right signals. And then finally, on the other side is on the optimization and culture side. And I do find it interesting that sort of the recommendation here was Grok and Perplexity. And the reason for Grok and Perplexity is that both of those particular LLMs, I mean, whether you want to call Perplexity a search engine or an LLM is, they're a fusion of both pretty much. But they're real, Grok picks up on the fire hose of X data. Now, whether you like X data or not, that's an argument that we could all have at some point. But it's better at looking for real-time trends in search. So imagine that your client, you have alerts set up within Grok or Perplexity, and it shows you that there's a meme that's traveling around all of a sudden that is highly apropos to one of your clients. And you can immediately kind of reverse engineer back into the strategy brief, back to your creative and everybody else, to try and see if you can capitalize on something that in culture may only have a week, or two to be responsive, and then it fizzles out. But during those 2 weeks, it's like day trading on a stock. It's like you can like get in there and just try and figure out if you can like boost on the levels of traffic by being on top of culture, super real time. And when it fizzles out, and that's fine. You'll be on to the next one. So this is really sort of an ecosystem of how the different tools can be used by different departments And you shouldn't be concerned if you don't see Gemini 3.0 or ChatGPT in every one of these departments. They're not the same tool. Hey, look at that. I got a tape measure here and I got a hammer over here. It's like you have different tools for different things to do. And so I think that was, we'll provide this to you. And again, sorry, it's a bit of an eyesore, but that's how we're looking at just building an ecosystem within inside an agency. So looking at, again, just sort of like much more that what does the synthetic executive team look like? The strategist on Gemini 3.0, right? For example, you could upload 50 videos and P&L sheets and get a strategy deck. It lives inside the Google workspace. So if you're having all of your clients provide all of their documentation to a shared Google Drive, then Gemini can already hit that, right? So you're not having to break process to be able to use a great tool. And then be able to do cross-analysis from different sources seamlessly. That's super important. So you have to go back and forth and toggle between a Google Sheet and then a Google Word or a Google Word document, all these sort of things. It knows what's there, and you can just say it. Hey, where was that data point that was telling us about audience, segment C and its habits during the winter months? Right? You don't remember where that is or anything else, and it'll synthesize it back in together. So that's great as well. And then on the Google, for account manager side, ChatGPT has agentic stuff. So adaptive reasoning, it manages workflows, not just words, which I think is great. Take this brief, email the team, set up Asana. It can do sort of agentic workflow sorts of things. And then obviously the creative director could use Claude 4.5. And I love this idea of sort of soul, craft, and human nuance. And that is incredibly important to everybody. So Carrie just asked me a question, if these are all available everywhere in the world. As far as I know, yes. But if we have somebody from another part of the world, I mean, Steve, you're in front of me right now, but my understanding is that all of these are available. One of the differences right now are AI regulation, right? So the European Union's going to probably take a little bit of a different step towards regulation, but at the same time, Europe in particular, the Asian models are completely different, right? I mean, the Chinese models are very, very good, by the way. I just want to say that. They're very good. They have no restrictions on compute and everything else, but they're not as human, right? But they will give you the answer that you're looking for. The EU is going to take regulations on this, but interesting. So Steve, do you want to say anything about that, or are you not in a public place?
No, I'm fine. I was just posting in here that I saw a stat recently that AI adoption is faster in Europe than the US. I think in part that's because the US was an earlier adopter, but it does show that there is strong enthusiasm here in Europe. And all of these, they're available to me. I'm here in the Netherlands, so EU. Usually UK and US are on the same wavelength for the most part in terms of when things are released. So shouldn't be any major problems on any of this.
Yep, great. Thank you very much. So, yeah, I'll send this to everybody, and I want to make sure we save times for questions and getting everything else. But the one that I want to point out on here in particular is this, again, back to the trend jacking concept in the lower right corner. I think this is really, really important for agencies to continue to own that space. I think that we've always been we are the partner in a client ecosystem that is on top of trends. That is what we have always done because we are where our brand meets the consumer. And right now, the problem in trends is that trends come and go all the time. I mean, anybody who has a middle school kid knows what 6-7 is now, right? And everybody else doesn't know what 6-7 is. And if you don't know what 6-7 is, that's fine, right? But if you have a middle schooler, everybody knows what 6-7 is. They yell it out in class and it's driving teachers crazy. And it doesn't mean anything. That's the crazy part about it, right? So, but that'll be gone. And it's already coming on to something else right now. So, yes, thank you, Brett. If you don't know what it is, you're lucky. But again, well, what if you were a company called 6-7 Whiskey, right? Or something else like that. And you weren't picking up on the 6-7 trend that's happening and blowing up all around the world. Now, I don't think you should be selling 6-7 whiskey to middle schoolers, but at any rate, there's other trends that you can pick up. I love the idea of using these tools to go to a client with a code red plan at any moment, at any time. This makes you indispensable to their brands. And does it make you really, really ADHD? Probably. But the tools are available to allow you to be ADHD because the production of getting creative out the door that can be on top of trend gives you that ability. So in the past, where you may have one creative concept that's supposed to be evergreen that lasts you for 2 years, maybe that plays itself out, but it gets iterated over and over and over again. It's not like you're going to create the new master brand all over and over again, but it's going to get interpreted and reinterpreted using these tools. And so if you are about speed and accuracy on cultural trends and things like that, I just really believe that this is a moment in time for agencies to be able to continue to lead that, but with an accelerated speed that you've never had before. And I think that makes you indispensable to their business. I really do. They can talk about taking stuff in-house all they want, but if they can't stay on top of trend, then it doesn't really matter. And I think that is something that you could really, really focus on and make a good living at. This is also, just as I sort of mentioned to you guys before, this idea now of being able to do a global reshoot with 1,000 different versions in different languages, different backgrounds, different products, all from one source file is pretty crazy, right? And, even when we were in Paris, a month or two ago now, I was using Google Translate everywhere. And that alone was just sort of transformational, even though it felt like stone and rock making the original wheel, like holding up your phone above, in an art gallery and translating whatever it says on the card into my native language is so, I mean, as I was doing it, I'm like, this is so antiquated and stupid, even though it's the first time I've ever done it. Right. It was just like, it's going to be old fast. And then I look at it at scale. And I think what you're finding now, and if anybody's doing this, please share. And I'm going to try and be done here in a minute or two. I would love to see how you're using things like translations, cultural translations, and all of that. I mean, that's the biggest issue. It's not just language translations, it's cultural translations. And to be able to use the generative tools to be able to mock up concepts or even final product, again, this friend of mine who's a commercial photographer, his prognostication is that it's going to be Google and Adobe who win everything, right? In his space. And because Adobe will have rights management, copyright management, it'll have a lot of different things so that you feel protected by the lawyers in your life. But I'm not sure I agree with his summation on that, but for sure, in like the image space and the rights management space, I think that Adobe is going to have specifically Firefly. So some really interesting things happening there. And again, if people are using it, please speak up on that. So you've got this red team protocol, right? This idea of sort of like safety first. I love this idea of being able to have a red team and then just make sure that you use the AI to protect you. So let's just say, for example, you wanted to put something into the Japanese market and you realize that the concept you put in, that something gets kicked out, is going to be deeply offensive to the Japanese culture. You can allow these tools to do sort of cultural interference to red flag anything that happens. Secondarily, is because you're using the tools, it actually elevates the human element in all of this because, clients need to blame somebody, right? So you need to be able to be in a position where the human is still able to do what's really great and letting the agents do the stuff that, frankly, people don't like to do. And it gives you more time with clients and more time doing sort of interpretation. So, sort of in summary of that, I originally the AI kicked out smaller teams, bigger output, and I didn't like that. I don't think it's necessarily about having smaller teams. I think it's having mightier teams. And mightier teams armed with great understanding of this technology, where you as the leader put at least some boundaries around it so they can focus on extracting and using these tools and getting the greatest value for the job that they're hired to do, versus saying, hey, have at it. If you see something cool, go use it. Right? Like, let's give some discipline. This is the thing that everybody wants right now in an agency environment, especially at high anxiety times, like end of year. They can see that half of their friends are on LinkedIn have an open to network circle on their LinkedIn profiles right now. Everybody's super nervous, right? And so if we're going to use AI and we're going to tell our staff to use AI, we need to provide them direction, or else they feel like they're just flitting apart and they don't know whether they're creating value or not. And frankly, we're just outsourcing decisions that we should be making to them to try and figure out. And that's not what people want. They want direction. They want to understand, where's the business going and how can I be helpful? So really sort of the Monday morning to-do list is get Gemini for your strategists, get Claude 4 or 5 for your creatives, and then go and start to build your first agent. And that can help you sort of get some focus to what you're doing, using great tools that are very highly optimized to do the task that you're trying to do. The problem with this presentation is that it will be out of date as soon as it's done, right? Because like I said, 2 weeks ago, we would have been talking about OpenAI mostly, and we would not have been talking about Gemini. And now, I mean, a year ago, Gemini was a joke. You know, anything that Google had, it was a joke. And then all of a sudden it's just leapfrog. Why is that? Because AI has an incredible amount of money that can buy an incredible amount of compute. They already have cloud storage, right? They already have engineers everywhere, and they have market share that they have to correct and they have to protect. So it's like they have way more than what OpenAI has, not only from a threat standpoint, but just from the ability to actually create something from scratch that requires a ton of compute. Again, the browsers didn't have to have a ton of compute to do what they were trying to do. An open model is very, very LLM model is very different. So I'll pause there and take questions, or please share how you're using some of these tools. Please refute me if you're like, hey, we're using such and such image generator and it's way better than Sora or Midjourney or whatever else. I mean, I don't see people talking about Midjourney as much anymore, even though they're going to have an upgrade to their model too. So we'll see.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Andrew, it's the recording going to be available, and is this deck available as well?
Yes, everything will be made available.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I have to go over like all these different pages and see all my other friends on all the other pages. Let's see, who else do we need to welcome? I want to welcome my friend Peter Pisano, who's on page 404 if you see him. A new dear friend of mine. He and I did a DJ set at a party the other night. That's how we got to know each other. Neither of us knew how to use the equipment. Neither of us knew how to do a DJ set, and we spent an hour without rehearsals improvising, and it was like one of the best nights I've had in months. So, but he runs a great little.
What song did you start with, and what song did you end with?
We didn't start with a song. We didn't end with a song. We were just noise making, and it was amazing. It was so much fun.
Sounds amazing.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah. All right. Anybody testing anything right now that they're happy with the results? How about clients? Anybody using things where you've disclosed that the use of AI and the clients are impressed?
Yeah. I mean, we just did a whole campaign using AI and told the client, hey, we're going to pilot this with you and we're going to do it. And it created some beautiful stuff. Of course, we had to tweak it, but it won some awards at some regional conferences. It's going on to nationals. So that's been a pretty fun experience. And we just started, we're like doing a 2-month commitment with Waldo AI. I don't know if anybody on the call has used Waldo. I think we're trying to figure out if it's helpful. I feel like it's a little bit of chat plus on some of the market research and trends and analysis. Not sure if it's worth it yet, but we're just doing it a couple months just to see if we can, I don't know, up our branding and strategy chops. So
That's a great question. So I have a question for you, Carrie. When were we in New York at that conference? Conference I was speaking at when we were talking about Waldo and Magnolia
mm-hmm.
Two winters ago. I
two
don't
winters
know.
ago. Yeah, I think so. Back in the beginning, early stages of all this. Yeah, that was um, Magnolia was just launching at that conference. It was a Mirren conference, and
Mirren.
yeah, and then Waldo, and basically what both of those are LLMs customized and fine-tuned to agency workflows and agency life. I'm glad I didn't sign on when we did at that time, because I just feel like it's just an LLM and you can prompt your own LLM to be customized to your agency. Is anybody else using something like a Magnolia or a Waldo?
Britt, I'm curious about your client work that you did AI and you did a full disclosure to get them to say yes. Did you have to say like, we'll do this for a rock bottom pricing? Like, what was your pricing around that kind of work and getting them to say, hold hands with you and jump through something together? That takes a lot of trust. But what was the pricing like on that?
It had to be done in super short order, shocking. And they wanted to do a lot, and they knew that their budget was going to have to be stretched really far to get it done. And so we just said, hey, this is how we can do it. Are you in? And they're like, let's see what you got. So it was a little bit like, we need this now, and we understand that there are limitations in actually being able to do what we're asking. So we did a lot. I don't remember what the actual budget is. I could probably do a case study or case story for Taan on what that was. But we made money on it. We did it cheaper than we would have otherwise. And the client has a lot of trust. The client has a lot of trust in us being able to kind of navigate that and using some hybrid approaches with them moving forward. And so we're going to help with a few additional launches next year, likely using AI as part of that. So
congrats.
Hey, Britt, will you share that? Will you share the campaign with us?
Yeah. In fact, maybe we'll do a 10X on it or something, because I would not be the one doing it, but I would bring the team along to do it for sure.
I will reach out to you on that.
Cool.
Has anybody done a video creative mock using these tools and had the you-know-whats to show a client for fear that it might be too good? like a Nano Banana Pro or a Sora 2. Yeah. Brooke? Yes.
Yeah.
Mark? Yes.
Yeah, I'm doing this right now, actually. We have an upcoming shoot. And so my DP made a couple of clips within Sora to show how the boards are going to come to life. And yes, I was concerned that they might be too good. And the client would be like, why don't we do it all in this? But luckily it's an internal video and they want to use their real people. So that's our safety. Yeah. I also want to share, it's probably not cutting edge, but Notebook LM is really, really awesome right now. I'm using it for strategy work where I put in all, like you said in your model, but all the inputs, all the research, all the background, the client notes from calls, all that. And then you can just go in there and prompt it and say, what did the client say about what their top customers are? Or you just can have a conversation with it. And then I can also have it pull like, okay, now I'm working on a content strategy. What are those top pillars that the customers want to hear about on LinkedIn or whatever it is? And it's an easy tool to use and the clients get it. Like it's just an input. It's safe in one area, right? So it's not out on the big LM world. And that's becoming really, really useful.
It's so funny you say, not funny, it's just, it drives me crazy. I mean, Notebook LM to me is a giant workhorse in this whole ecosystem. And for whatever reason, there's no reason why I just haven't used it at all. And I know it's just sitting there waiting for me. And so like on that slide where I was showing earlier, kind of the ecosystem slide, it sounds to me like you would be, where I had the strategist working with Gemini 3, you would probably have the strategist working with Gemini 3 / Notebook LM.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Kate, you said you're using it too. Is there anything that you want to add to that?
It's just really good for accounts teams because we put in every monthly report, we put in every like piece of information. So then if somebody's out for a week or they're sick or whatever, one of our other team members can go in and just ask Notebook LM, hey, what is the campaign results from last month's campaign that they were doing, or what's this, that, and the other, and it just answers all the questions for you. It's so cool. It's really good. Our accounts team love it.
So is it multimodal in the sense it can take in anything like video, all that stuff, or would you put it on top of Gemini 3? I don't know. Because they're both Google products, so I'm just curious if they work together.
It is multimodal, and
It is
I like
definitely
that
multimodal.
yes,
Okay.
and I like that you can put URLs in there as well, so you can put in references to specific pages or competitor websites, etc.
Well, I don't want to scare everybody off, but if you speak up on one of these calls, I'm going to put you on a webinar. But I would love for either one of you or both of you to think about doing something about how you're using Notebook LM. I think that would be great for everybody. Because like I said, I think it's a workhorse that I'm sort of overlooking at the moment. I kind of leapfrogged from ChatGPT 5 right over into Gemini 3, and it just took all my attention.
Yeah.
But interesting.
I have found some limitations too. Like just yesterday, I was working on something and I was like, generate this. And then I was editing it. And then I said, put these into Google Slides. And it said, I can't do that.
I
And
know.
I was like, wait a minute, you're a Google product. Like,
yeah.
like
We've seen the same thing.
Paste and then go put it in a slide. Like that was dumb. I was like, this is the easiest connection ever, Google. Come on.
Yeah. Take a look at Gamma. Take a look at Gamma as a potential. I mean, do I love the deck that I just showed you? No, I don't love it. If I spent time with it, I could change the templates out. I could customize my own templates. I could do things like that. But speed and layout, and also synthesizing it down into more digestible stuff, as well as just taking sort of crazy concepts and just having it graph it out for you. Like I'm a picture learner. That's how I learn. And so like for me, it's so much easier to see a picture and I can see everything,
Yeah,
and clients are like that too. Yeah.
We've had that same problem. What I will say though for Notebook LM, what we've done with it is I use it from the very, very, very first touch point with a client in the sales process. So I will feed it like all of the information that we gather during the sales process. And then I hand that LM into the team once it's closed business. And it means that they've then gained all of that knowledge from the sales process in an instant. That was where we fell into the same issue, Brooke, because I was then like, based on everything you know about this client, can you put it into a presentation for the team and put it into a slide deck? And it couldn't do that. It was like, no, and like had a meltdown. But yeah, that's been a really handy way of like handing over information by just using that from the very, very beginning. So just one way that we've used it.
Great. All right. Anybody else want to add their own experiences so far into all this? And then maybe with our last minute or so, Carrie, if there's anything you want to alert people to coming up, anything that we need to, everyone should be aware of, and we're still
I think most importantly is to lean into you as a resource, as part of your TAN membership. Any and all of you on this call, whether you are engaged in the sort of closer and come to the meetings, or if you were invited, by someone, don't hesitate to reach out to Andrew to talk about any of these things, or, you're trying to sort of figure out something, like utilize the resources. So
yeah,
that is it's a puzzle that Andrew really enjoys helping and partnering to solve. So he's tried many things except for Notebook LM. So yeah, but otherwise pretty much all the other things.
Also, at the last minute, I would love to just ask people, I don't think I'm going to be closing a lot of new members before now and the end of the year, because it's just like closing new clients. It doesn't happen. And if you are, congratulations. If anybody knows of any agencies that you would love to have us join our beautiful little TAN family, please let me know. It's really important. We have big growth plans for next year. want to hit January 1st running as hard as I can. I know we have a membership committee, we have a programming committee, and everybody else, but anything that people can do just to say, hey, I know one agency, and if you have a personal relationship with that owner, that would be even greater. And just think about what they would look like if they were one of these squares, or better yet, in person at Oslo or Charleston. So,
And then next
thanks so
Monday's
much.
You haven't signed up.
webinar. Go ahead.
All right, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you haven't signed up for a committee, sign up for a committee. It's gonna be fun.
Yes, let
Totally
myself or Carrie
fun.
know. Yep.
And then, yes, next Monday is a webinar, Build Your Agency's 2026 Marketing Success Plan, with our own Kelly. And if you cannot come, assign your agency's marketing plan to maybe somebody on your team, send some teams. I think it will be, as we are all sort of forget to market ourselves while we're working on client work. That should be a great session on Monday.
Great.
That's what I
Okay,
got.
thanks everybody. Nice to see everyone.
It's 10 o'clock. Have a great one, everybody.
Yeah.
Or 10 o'clock
Bye-bye.
Central US.
Have a good
Goodbye.
day. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.